listening to Your Ultimate Life with Kellan Fluckiger, only on LA Talk Radio.
Hey, welcome to the show tonight. Glad to have you here. This is a show dedicated to helping you create a life of purpose, prosperity, and joy by serving with the skills and gifts you have and creating value. I'm super excited about a guest we have tonight who is doing that addition of value in a really cool way. Gene Edelman, welcome to the show, Gene.
Kellan, great to see you. You know how much I respect you, and it's a pleasure to be on this live stream with you.
I'm stoked. So I can't wait to dive in. And one of the things I always ask is for you to drop all modesty for just a moment and tell the listeners, how is Gene adding good to the world?
Sure. Well, we developed a process to 3D print homes using recycled polymers. We can do it 30% less expensive, 70% faster than traditional way. And we're using water bottles and food containers to make this. So 150,000 empty water bottles going to make in every one of our modules. So we're using thousands of tons of plastic that normally would go in a landfill or ocean in the ocean for something purposeful. So that's what I'm working on.
That is the most awesome thing in the world. And what people don't know, and they know now, is that you're in LA, and LA just burned lots of it. And so there's staggering opportunities. And when we first talked, you talked a lot about tiny homes, meaning smaller modular things, but you were just telling me ahead of time that it's can be scaled up and built larger also. So less people think that it's some weird looking box. Talk a little bit more about, like, wax poetic. Tell me the possibilities about this stuff.
Yeah. Well, we started with baby steps. When we printed our first prototype a little bit less than 3 years ago, we just printed a little backyard studio, something that's 10 by 12. It was COVID. People needed places to work, from home, and so many people didn't have enough space. So that was our first unit, and then we have kind of a roadmap of where we want to go. So the next product was ADUs, accessory dwelling units, which are very popular in California. This is a little home you can build in your backyard and use for rental or for additional family members. Then we went into doing this units on wheels. They're also called park models. These are homes under 400 square feet that can go into glamping resorts, campsites. And actually, California now allows them to be your ADU in the backyard. They're very, very popular. Over 50% of our units sold last year was that product itself. And then, like you mentioned, January 7th, we've been hit with this devastating fires. I lived through the fires in LA. I was here 6 years ago when there was a fire in Malibu. And actually, that gave me an idea that to rebuild Malibu, we needed to find a way to build faster. I mean, we started the company a few months after Malibu fires. And it took us months and years to build homes to replicate. So it was that idea, accelerated by COVID, that we need to build in a factory, much more automated, because LA has had labor shortages in the construction industry forever. And now they're exacerbated by expulsions and by just and of course, volume. I mean, LA County builds only 1,000 homes a year. During the Malibu fires, we lost 1,600 homes. The fires in January, we lost over 11,000 homes. So, at the pace that we're going, it'll take us 10, 11 years to rebuild if we build nothing else. So it's true devastation. And our roadmap has always, our plan was in this year in 2025 to go vertical, to go multi-story, and to go with bigger structures. So after fires happened, we just went into an accelerated mode to really not only just to say we'll do it this year, we're going to do it this month. So we're getting 2 additional pieces of equipment. We started additional equity raise to raise additional capital so that we can help our friends, neighbors, family members who lost their homes.
This is really amazing, and people have heard of 3D printers and for nefarious purposes, like people printing weapons and stuff. And you're creating homes, and you're using 150,000 plastic bottles for just a small modular unit. And that small modular unit, you said 10 by 12, so that's like 120 feet, 120 square feet. And tell us, like for the uninitiated, which I'm going to count myself among, tell me how this works. Like, how do you, 50 million plastic bottles come into your factory, and what happens to them? And how do you turn that into a livable structure that doesn't look like it came out of some science fiction movie from the 60s?
Yeah, all good questions. So first of all, we work with companies so we develop a formula for what the material will look like. Plastic constitutes 60% of the material. The other 40% includes fiberglass, which is very rigid. That's what adds rigidity to our product. And then we add additives that have UV protection because, as you might know, plastic like fades in the sun, and fire retardant material. We were living in this area. It's not that we just had fire now and 6 years ago. I've done the research over the last 100 years. There have been fires every 5 to 8 years. The only problem is they're getting much more severe. We've never had hurricane speed winds, which we've had this time. That's the first day that the fires hit us. The planes couldn't be flying and putting the water out because the winds were 80 to 100 miles an hour. And of course, there was some poor planning. There was no water in the fire hydrant. So anyway, the disasters are getting worse. The planning is lacking. And so people lose homes and lose lives. And there is no reason for that. I mean, we know that it's going to happen. It's going to get worse and worse, and we just need to be prepared. So in terms of materials, we develop our units to comply with the latest standards. And quite honestly, homes built in the last 15 years have done the best. They have survived because 15 years ago in 2008, there were new codes adopted after bad fires in 06 and 07. And so people who build new homes have done better than ones that are older. Most of the homes here in this area are very, much older, average 30, 40 years. And so the homes that have been built with old standards didn't do as well. And it's primarily, Colin, because, the fires rarely start where the just flame comes and consume the house. What happens is there are a lot of non-native trees here, like palm trees, and they fly the fibers a mile to 2 miles away. So what happens, the fiber either breaks the window, if the window is just single pane, very easy to break, or comes through air conditioning vent. So a lot of the changes in codes allowed for double or triple pane windows and having air conditioning systems that don't, just let anything that comes in from the outside. Those are the simple things that could have been done and need to be done in the future to prevent fires from engulfing these thousands of homes. And, some 29 people lost their lives, which is just, it should not be happening in today's world.
No, it shouldn't be. So I want to take you back to, you have contracts with companies. I want to follow the plastic bottle. So you have 60% plastic, you have fiberglass, which gives it rigidity, some additives, which prevent the fading, that the sun would do, and some fire retardant stuff.
Yep.
And then you stir that up in some kind of mixture, and tell me some more.
Yeah, there are large companies who actually produce pellets for the 3D printing industry. So we give them the formulation and they ship us tons of this material. It comes here in pellets. So we don't go directly to look for the plastic bottles. There is an intermediary in the middle who gets, and some of the plastic they get are from a consumer stream. So literally recycled plastic bottles and plastic food containers, and some of it come from industrial stream. There are people who make plastic bags and all kinds of materials where there's just leftovers. And we use just PETG. PETG is a kind of plastic that's already been tested for off-gassing, and it is the safest plastic we can get. If you drink water from the bottle, you know that it's safe. So we use the safest kind of material. and they deliver to us in. I'm actually in my factory right now. It comes here in huge pallets, and every month we get a new delivery of what we need, and it gives us opportunity to also experiment to come up with better materials. So we've been in business, doing this only a little bit less than 3 years. We're already on the fifth material. I mean, it's like we have an opportunity to see kind of how it reacts to, because technology is getting better and better. I mean, we use this robots and extruder, a piece of equipment that melts these pellets. They get faster and faster. So we are trying to optimize the material so that we can increase the speed. Right now, it takes us 1 day to make the module we were talking about, which is huge saving over doing it traditional way. In traditional construction, to build the roof, 2 walls, and a floor takes 3 to 4 months. It takes us 1 day. That's the biggest speed. And it also space in the factory. Our factories, this one here is 20,000 square feet. We're building a little larger factory in Colorado, opening later this year. But traditional builders of the prefab housing, their factories are 150,000 square feet, because most of the space is utilized to build this module. In our environment, it's a robot that takes the pellets, melts them, and makes a structure. So it's a time saving. There is absolutely no waste. So it's very sustainable. And it's less expensive because lumber prices fluctuate, steel prices fluctuate, and so it's a lot less expensive to use the material we use.
So I find this whole thing just incredible. I'm excited about it myself, and I'm not even in the market or anything like that, but just to hear you describe it and how it saves. Like, if you can build a module in a day that something would have taken a month before, I mean, that's a 30 times savings. You've saved 97% of the time, and you never have to worry about material shortage because you have essentially an unlimited supply of this stuff.
Yeah. We manufacture 40 million metric tons of plastic every year, and we only recycle 5%. So it's like there's plenty of it left.
Plenty of it left. So what?
There is still manual tasks that we do after we print the module, and we still have to install bathrooms and kitchens and lighting in a traditional way. So it takes us a unit with a bathroom and a shower and the kitchen takes us 4 weeks, but still huge saving over 9 months. And our goal here is actually to automate every piece of the process, because we can print the interior walls. We can work with other manufacturers who just bring us pods for bathrooms and kitchens and showers. So our goal is, this is just the beginning. I mean, literally, that's, well, it seems like it's taken years and we're not moving as fast as we'd like, but still, we're at the very beginning, and our goal is to automate every piece of the process.
I'm just blown away. So I just from a fascination point of view, like if I'm putting wiring in, it goes along the studs and we put drywall and stuff like that over, where does it go? Wiring and plumbing and that kind of stuff in a printed house?
Yeah. Very good question. So we actually print, now it gets a little bit technical. We print a outside wall, and then the printer goes and prints an inside wall, and we leave void in the middle. So in that void is where we put insulation, wiring, plumbing, water. So
okay, so you actually create space.
Yeah, I think what helped us come up with this whole idea was the fact that we were not. Look, 5 years ago, I didn't know what 3D printer is. Or at least I had the same common. You kind of see a little 3D printers or 3D printers using cement for building homes. So the fact that we were builders and developers before we started this business really helped us think of it as, we're going to build a house. Still will have on the interior, by the way, you can't tell that it's 3D printed. I mean, it's very much like a traditional house. But in terms of to think of how it's going to be, like the question you asked, where are the wiring? Where is everything's going to go? We really thought of it. We on one hand want to use technology to accelerate the process, but the building inspectors still need to inspect it. So you put your building inspector hat. They will want to inspect it before it's covered up, right? Sure. And insurance companies will need to insure it, and finance companies will need to finance it. So those are the questions. prior to printing our first unit 3 years ago, we've been working on this for 2.5 years. Still seems like a very accelerated process, but it took us months, days, months, weeks, months, years to figure out the answers to all these questions.
So inside, is it the actual printed material, or is there something over the top? Like if I want to hang a picture.
Yeah. Now inside is just like any. I mean, we use it a drywall or just a board, that you would see in the homes. You can hang a picture, hang a TV, everything that you would do in a normal house. You don't see the printed material on the inside. On the outside, it actually, people love it, because it has that very modern look.
Yeah.
And it looks like a little bit like a vinyl record because it's a layer by layer. And really, plastic and vinyl is. I mean, we've used vinyl siding for construction for years, right?
Yeah, we have.
I built apartments back in the 80s. So 40 years ago, using vinyl siding for the exterior. So it's not new. It's a new application of the material that's been proven.
So your background as a developer was really valuable. I'm really excited, and I don't want to spend the whole time talking about the technical aspects of these, but I am so 5 years ago now. So it took you 2.5 years, so 6 years ago. Is that about right when you started on this? Okay, so 6 years ago, you were already a developer. You build houses, you build apartments. What made you say suddenly, forget it, no more wood, I'm going to build houses with plastic? Tell me what happened.
Yeah, what happened was when we started, my business partner, Ross McGuire, and I started the company, we put 3 bullets on our blackboard. Build faster, build less expensive, and less environmental impact. I mean, what started this was a trash bin in front of every project we ever built that fills up the day after we bring the materials. It almost felt like 50% of the stuff I buy at Home Depot ends up in the trash can because it can't be measured exactly. You can't order exact quantities, on and on and on. And of course, as I mentioned, we started the company when we were rebuilding for Malibu. And, it was, first of all, Malibu is about 30 minutes from, there is no Home Depot in Malibu. So,
right. I've been there.
Yeah. So hard to get workers out there, hard to get materials out there. You have to order something, it'll come maybe 2 days later. And so building faster and less expensive was just, and then plus a lot of people are underinsured or don't want to spend as much as they spent before. So there's this on one hand pressure to build faster and less expensive. On the other hand, there is this huge, demand with limited supply. So that's kind of how it started. And then during COVID, it got worse because now we're building like the small ADUs or backyard studios in people's backyards. And my customers were calling me and telling me, well, such and such didn't show up, or he's not doing, I measured and didn't do as good of a job. So it was like exclamation marks over, we need to figure out how to meet this criteria. And the first thing was, let's build in the factory, because if we can build them in the factory and just bring completed unit to the site, then we won't need to be doing all this shipping materials and making sure our employees show up to work. We knew who is at work here. So that was the beginning of it. And then as it evolved, we didn't necessarily, at that time, you can still see a lot of videos on YouTube of 3D printing with cement. That's been going. First family moved into a 3D printed house from cement near Paris about 9 years ago. The whole industry is very new. But I didn't like using cement. Cement is terrible for CO2. When people say that construction is bad for the environment, it's cement that generates CO2. All these high-rise buildings we built from cement is what was the beginning of us ruining our environment. So I said, look, I love 3D printing just with anything but cement. And so my business partner and I just went at it and tried to explore what other materials have been used in industries, maybe not in construction. Well, first in construction, the plastic, like I mentioned, vinyl siding, also plastic is used for piping, for sewer pipes and stuff like this. But we also looked at adjacent industries, so automotive and airline industry. So airline industry prints some seats in planes. Automotive prints interior, exteriors of cars. So industries that really need safety, and we saw that they're using polymers. So it was really finding the right formula that on one hand, I mean, the beauty of polymer is much lighter than cement or than any other construction materials. So we saw that the reason why they use it, but we needed to mix it up with something that will make it last for a long time. Because again, we're in California, we're in the most highly regulated state. We have to offer a 10-year structural warranty for our product. So fiberglass was that magic, that it really is. Fiberglass is, well, it's less of it is in the material percentage-wise, but it's what adds rigidity. And fiber and the polymers use like a resin. It basically what holds the material together. So that's kind of involved.
Wow, that's just a fascinating story. So I want to dig a little bit into your motivations. And because I like, this show's about adding good to the world, and you are in a massive way. And the need for your product, and we talked before the fires, before all this, you were talking about adding a factory in Colorado and then somewhere eventually in the eastern part of the U.S. And you wanted to meet, certain growth demands. And suddenly you had the opportunity and been tasked with this staggering need to replace a bunch of things. What is it that made you, and I know money in business is important and good, but tell me more a little bit about why is it important to you to make a difference, to build things faster, cheaper, and with less environmental impact? What is it about Gene that makes you care about that? Tell me a little about that.
Yeah. Housing shortage in the United States is, depending on who you listen to, 4 to 10 million homes. But all of us feel it. I mean, I have 3 kids and they can't afford to buy a house. They all have good degrees and great jobs and they can't afford to buy a house. So a lot of it is very kind of selfish. It's like the next generation, look, as you know, I came here from Ukraine and I always, when I came here some 40 years ago, people said, well, next generation will do better than the current generation. And now for a couple generations, I'm not sure that we can say that. And big item for that is housing. Just when people can't buy a house, you can't have that foundational piece, because a house it's not only a home, but it builds your credit. You're able to borrow money for passive income and for generational wealth. And we don't have that. That just, so that's part of it was selfish. Next is environment. I mean, we're killing the environment. We're not going to hear sit and debate whether we have a global warming or what, but it surely seems like every crisis is getting worse. Wildfires are wiping out more homes. Floods, in Nashville, we lost a bunch of homes there. In Florida, you have earthquakes. Turkey lost 260,000 homes a year and a half ago. Still, very few of them got rebuilt. You have wars, Middle East and Ukraine, hundreds of thousands of homes getting destroyed. So it's like we started out at a shortage, and like every month goes by, and either natural disaster or conflicts, we're losing more and more. And at that pace, I mean, look at what happened with our homeless population. Again, I live in LA. We have 75,000 homeless. We're in the middle of Hollywood. This is where glamour and wealth are so much on display. And to get to my house from I park my car right in front of my house, I have to step over people. That's wrong. I mean, we got to do something about it. It's just in the numbers, 75,000 in LA, over 750,000 around US. It's a 16% from a year ago. It's counted in January. If you were to count in the summer, because during cold months, people kind of huddle up and still find family. In the summer, it's probably 1 million people without a home. In our country, we cannot allow this to happen. So there is a need for housing for young people. There's a need for housing who fell on the hard times. So many of them are veterans. And, people say, well, they have drugs and alcohol. True. But it's a lot easier to deal with some of the social problems when there is a roof over someone. A lot harder to do it when they're on the street and people sell them the stuff, give them the stuff, It's really can get out of control. It is already out of control. It can get worse. So we have a very much of a social mission. Yeah, I love selling our units to this beautiful glamping resorts that sell them for $750 a night. Beautiful, great. Makes money for us, makes money for home, for the property owners. But our mission is to find ways to build affordable housing, build housing for homeless. Really excited. We just signed a contract to build 60 village for 60 homes in San Luis Obispo. It's being done at 5% of the cost per unit that LA spends on building homeless housing here. I mean, it's
hold on. I want to hear that again. You just are doing a contract in San Luis Obispo for 60 units.
Yeah.
And it is 5% of the cost
per unit that costs
unit.
San Francisco and Los Angeles to build homeless housing here. And we signed the contract just a couple of days before the new year. The whole community is going to be up and going in September. And in LA, it takes 6 years and $800,000 per unit to build a single unit for the homeless. Yeah, we're about to host World Cup here in 2 years, Olympics in 4 years. It's going to be embarrassing to have the world come here and see people on the streets. So it's just an 800,000 unit that city spends for the homeless. There's not enough money in the world. You take 800,000 multiplied by 75,000. That's a big number. We don't have $50 billion. Plus, to repair Palisades and Eden fires are going to be a couple $100 billion. There's just not enough money to do this just for a small area. So
why is it $800,000? And with that, I'm not trying to get into regulation or politics or anything, but why is it $800,000 for one homeless unit, and it's 1/20th of that in San Luis Obispo? Why is that?
Because in LA, the whole building homes for apartments for the homeless started a few years ago, where the numbers were not that big, and to build a high rise in downtown LA, by the time you get all the permits, by the time you pay all the consultants on structural and architectural and finance fees and developer fees, that number becomes a very big number. California just passed last year a law that calls for interim housing. Interim housing means they can use our units, they're on wheels or little units, and so all of a sudden the price difference is just unbelievable, between price difference and the timeline. And the reality is, in San Luis Obispo, it's a piece of property downtown, the county owned it. And, 3 years from now, if they now have more money for services, to provide drug addiction and job placement and all of this kind of stuff, it's very possible in 3 years they won't need this anymore. Then we can move the unit somewhere else. The not-for-profit we work with is called Dignity Moves, and their CEO is wonderful. Her name is Elizabeth Funk. Elizabeth say, I have nightmares of building these units and then seeing them demolished and be again taken to a trash can. These units can either be moved somewhere else or can be recycled. I mean, we really believe in circular economy. We can take these units that are made and cut them up and make new units, bigger units. So it makes economic sense. It makes environmental sense, and it's good for us, for all of us.
It is good for all of us, and as you described this, it sounds like almost. It's not too good to be true, because it is true. It's real. But, you can cut them up and recycle them. And if you pull the plumbing and the electrical out of this hollow space and just take all the innie walls and outie walls and, turn them into pellets again and start over again.
Exactly.
With practically, with at least very little waste, it sounds like.
No waste at all. No waste.
So how big, let's pretend for a minute that we got red tape out of the way and you were able to, we'll pick a number between 4 and 10, let's say 7 million shortage units of housing shortage in this country. What would it take to, and probably printed homes isn't appropriate for all of it, but let's say even half of it, 3 or 4 million homes. What would it take for you to build 3 or 4 million units between 600 and 1,500 square feet?
Well, it's a huge undertaking. I mean, our factory here in LA can make 3 of these modules that are 9 by 20, 180 square feet in one day. So we could do 60 of these in a month. So while it sounds like a lot, again, when you say here's a challenge, there's no way we can meet anywhere near the goal that you just set for us. So basically, we can make a 600 square feet home in one day, right? So
yeah,
even working 20, I mean, our printer works 24 hours a day. It runs, but working 22, 25 days, even including some weekends. Yeah, it's 25 homes. It's not going to move a needle. All right, so that's why we're very excited about our Colorado factory, because that was an example of public-private partnership. The state provided the funding for our equipment. The local developer is going to build us a factory and going to build a subdivision right next to the factory of these affordable homes. And that's a combination that we're looking for in other places. You were right. We're looking at some locations on the East Coast and Midwest, and that's a kind of a combination I'm looking for. I want the state to provide the funding, because raising equity while we just started our next raise is expensive.
Sure.
So if the government can provide and Colorado basically realized that they have a shortage of houses. They have tremendous inflow of people from California and from other places, and they only have one factory that makes homes. So they just ship everything from other states. So the cost of shipping, the cost of building units that meet Colorado requirements. So many other states, again, making a one-time investment to bring more capacity makes sense. And now other states are following Colorado lead. We just responded to RFP in Cleveland, Ohio. I don't know whether we'll get it. They only planning to do one factory. Colorado is bringing 8 manufacturers. We're the only 3D printing manufacturing, but they're bringing other offsite, basically factory-built housing. That's kind of a solution. There are many other ways to do this, but idea that you can build in a factory where you control the environment, you have an increased quality assurance, you can do it faster, better, less expensive, is the big solution. But we're just, U.S. is far behind. Look, generally kind of, I am a huge, I'm all for America, Best innovation happens here. But in this area, Japan builds 50% of its housing in factories, and we build 4% in factories. So there is something about bringing more manufacturing to this country, and we just need to catch up. Scandinavia builds 25% of its housing in factories. So we're just lagging behind. And just to rely on private business to do this, there is no way. It's just like when we decided to get more competitive with chips, we're throwing money at this, and we're going to build more manufacturing capacity for chips. The same thing needs to happen in housing, because if we don't, we're just going to continue.
Well, it solves so many problems, homeless and environmental and everything. So you said Colorado's bringing 8, and one of them's a 3D printer. What are the other technologies? Are they just traditional manufactured housing, or is it some other kinds of stuff?
Very much traditional manufactured housing, which is still faster and less expensive than doing it traditionally. So,
meaning traditionally, where they go out and pour a foundation, and all the workers come and build the thing on site.
Think of it this way: if we were to build, 100 years ago, we had a horse and a buggy, right?
Yeah.
And then decided to build cars in the factory. 100 years ago, we had a carpenter with a hammer and a nail doing a house. And 100 years, and now we're still doing it the same way. How does it make sense? What else? What else do we do? What other industry that in 100 years we have not made just a drastic change?
Right.
Housing is the only one. Yeah. We've made progress in agriculture and in all kind of other manufacturing, in everything. Housing has not made a move, and it's way overdue.
So I'm going to go to a different place. You said you came over from Ukraine 40 years ago, and because of the war, Ukraine is way up in people's consciousness now, where it wouldn't have been if, this terrible thing hadn't happened. What made you decide to leave and come over here what, 40 years, 20 in the 80s. What made you do that?
Yeah, it was our family's decision. It's my dad, when he decided to take us out of the country, was in his 50s, didn't speak any English. We had no money. We left with $400. But he and my mom were highly educated. He had a PhD in economics. And I'm going to be, both of them passed now, but I'm indebted to them and, for the rest of my life. And all my kids are, because I don't know whether I would do, like at this age, just go totally foreign country, no money, no language, no nothing, right?
Yeah, that's a big deal. Was it hard? That 40 years ago, it was still Soviet, so was it hard for them to get out?
Yeah. Well, we had the one little opportunity we had family in this country. So my great grandfather left in 1914, left his wife and 2 kids behind. So it was a split family because of the wars and so he started a new family here. So we had that one thread of a connection that allowed us to get out. Still was very hard because as we were on a train from Ukraine into Hungary, the border patrol took our passports and never gave them back to us, either intentionally or unintentionally. We left with no IDs, no $400 for 4 of us, no ID. So we were classified as refugees because we had no state. And it was a little bit tough to get people to believe who we were and to bang around Europe. We went from through Hungary and Czech Republic into Austria, and from there to Italy. And like many refugees, go to Italy and wait to find a place. And it was the same road. So we waited in Italy, and the U.S. Worked in the U.S. Embassy, and I got my green card when we arrived into JFK. So we had that thread that we grabbed on, and then after we left, my dad told me that my job is to get the rest of the family. So I took all of our cousins to a 3rd degree. We took everybody out, in 5 years after that. So
what a thing. Like, what a story to do that and to have a commitment to go do that. And that same kind of energy is driving, anybody that watches you talk about with the excitement about solving this problem and about how you've attacked it and the commitment you have and how silly it is that we live in the richest place in the world and we got people starving on the streets with no houses. But just to listen to your passion and enthusiasm is so contagious and so exciting. So what else haven't I asked you about either the technology or your passion or related projects that you're doing, if you even have room for those?
I am actually helping a client to develop a glamping resort, and I really love that industry. So I now publish a couple articles.
For people that don't, I know that I didn't before. So what is glamping?
It's glamorous camping. So on one hand, I think many of us love getting out in nature, right? Which I love that. I love seeing constellations at night and water rafting in the day and going to national parks. And then comes the night, you really want to have a comfortable accommodation. I mean, again, I'm not a camper, I didn't know what glamping is. I know what camping is, and I didn't care to understand it because coming from Ukraine, you kind of want to have comfortable accommodations.
Right. Well, you're not trying to find a place to sleep on a sleeping bag on the rocks. So
right.
Want a bed that's nicer. So that's what glamping is.
Right. So it's an exciting industry. And we're supplying, of course, our units to like 5 different resorts now. We have our units in Colorado, Arkansas, going to Montana, Arizona, Northern California. And so from not knowing literally when our first client came and said he's buying it for a glamping resort, I didn't know what he was talking about.
Right.
Sometimes you just have to be lucky, not that smart. I fall into that category. So I really believe that it's an incredible source for, we talked about generational wealth, passive income, because a lot of these glamping resorts don't have a lot of employees. It really is. A lot of them you can come in self register and open the unit, and so it kind of feels right for this time, and it's so beautiful. I mean, this country is so incredible. Just I've now made it an effort to stay in as many glamping resorts as I did, and so a lot of this last year, I was in Arizona desert and in in Montana, and beautiful place. I was in Arkansas. I mean, I was in Big Sur. We live in a beautiful country, and you can't see it by staying in a downtown Hilton. It's getting out there in the middle of and just experiencing is really.
So I'm thinking if you have these units as portable and low footprint as they are, it's also a lot more friendly environmentally to put these kinds of units for glamping, as it were, than it is to build cabins and all the kinds of things that you normally think about. Like I've stayed in Lake Tahoe, some beautiful places, but there are all these rustic cabins that were built. And it occurred to me that it would be a lot softer, I guess, in terms of the environment to put these things in there, and people can still enjoy the outdoors with a lower cost footprint.
And the other beauty is they're pest resistant. Pests don't like plastic. So in a lot of these resorts that you're talking about, I mean, they have to deal with termites and with all kind of animals that are chewing through it. Ours are pretty resilient to that. They're also very well insulated. We talked about how we leave space between the interior exterior wall. We have R30 insulation all the way around, where normally it's just in the roof, and then you have lower insulation on sides and like very little insulation on the floor. So they're very comfortable. They are very, excellent for long-term maintenance. It's just our product is perfect for this. I mean, again, sometimes you just have to be lucky and not that smart. I mean, I've started. This is my fourth business, and in the previous three, I did maybe something that entrepreneurs are told not to do, but I did it. I knew the industry. I believed in the product, and I built the product. And then after I built it, I went hard to sell it. Right. With this startup, it was incredible. When we just printed our first prototype, we put an image on the Facebook, and we started getting deposits from people who had their own vision of what this could work for. I mean, literally, the first customers from Big Sur, these two guys pulled up on their Harleys. They saw it. They got so excited. They came, and they're the ones who educated me on glamping. But they had a vision that this could fit in their they're in a kind of very rocky area was an incredible view of Pacific Ocean. And so they finally found a product that's light enough that could be up there. And it goes on and on and on. I mean, I just continue to be amazed by the entrepreneurial spirit that people have. I mean, our website has just some pictures, and customers have their own vision of what they want to use it for. And the reality is 3D printing allows for a high degree of customization. So we can make from units that go behind somebody's house. I mean, we have some videos on the website where you take this little unit behind somebody's 2-story big house that's going to be their pool house or their exercise studio. Or in the
so tell me where to find all that stuff. People, we've got us all excited about the possibilities. And what that really says is people have this idea of what this dream, this and that would look like, whether it's big or small for this particular unit. And because you can just create it in a program and then have it print, like you can do anything. Where can we find out? Like you mentioned, website. Where do we find out all that?
The best place is on our website. It's azureprintedhomes.com. So AZURE printedhomes.com. And the other thing is it's very transparent. It's like once you pick the unit you like, there is a configurator. You can pick colors, couple different lighting options, couple different 3 or 4 different cabinet options, shower options. So you can configure your own unit, and before you leave the website, it tells you exactly the price. You don't have to, like usually contractor walks in and then 30 days later he or she will give you the price. Here you can in less than an hour pick the unit you want and you know what the price is. Put a deposit and the work gets started. And then, I get, we've been very fortunate to get tremendous amount of publicity. Just my LinkedIn is my best place. There's all kinds of, whenever there's a new podcast or new material or something new, or our capital raise, that's all happening either on our website or on my personal. I'm the only Gene Edelman there is on LinkedIn, so just Gene and the last name EIDEL.
Now, wow, I thought I was the only person that could claim that with a weird name like Kellan Fluckiger. Okay, so the only Gene Edelman in LinkedIn. So Azure Homes, Azure Printing, what is it?
AzurePrintedHomes.com.
Azure Printed Homes, AZURE Printed Homes, AzurePrintedHomes.com.
Yep.
And also your LinkedIn page, Gene Edelman. And does Azure have a LinkedIn page also?
It also has a LinkedIn. We're on every social media.
Every social media.
Yeah.
So this is spectacular. So we've got a few minutes left. I want you to tell me just what didn't I ask you? What excites you? What's the next use? Like just so blue sky with you, like you did on your partner, faster, cheaper, lower environmental impact. What's on the horizon for you?
What's on the horizon? I mean, of course, immediate is to help rebuild homes lost here in the fires. I mean, the homes in Palisades are, majority of them are 2,000 to 4,000 square feet. And, if everybody is going to just try to rebuild exactly what they had, it'll take forever. So if they can get their architects more educated on how to use some of the prefabricated structures, it'll be much faster, less expensive. That's number one. Number two, longer term, mid-rise buildings. So our modules can be inserted in the mid-rise building. So building apartments or hotels could be done much quicker. While the structure goes up, the units can be made in the factory. And then, just so many property owners have these properties that are like, they have no infrastructure, right? Our units are so well insulated that by putting few solar panels in the battery, they can be off grid. And we have a number of customers who now use them off grid. So they still need water. They still need septic or sewer. But electric, which is like a big problem in many places, you can now don't need it. So it opens up opportunities for many people who might have some property. They can either buy some property or maybe have some property that their family left to them, and they said, I can't figure out what can be done. This ability to build some short-term housing using our units is incredible, and that builds generational wealth and passive income. It's all good for that. We have a lot of inquiries from all over the world. I mean, again, our goal for 25, 26 was to expand in the U.S. to have factories in every time zone, but we have inquiries from Middle East. I just came back from Saudi Arabia and UAE, Asia. Japan. Again, they understand factory build. They still don't have 3D printing. Europe. Ukraine, but also we have.
Is anybody else doing what you're doing, or are you the only
no,
one
we're
in the
still
world?
the only ones, so while the going is good, now we've patented our process, but there's going to be people who are going to copy it. So, Australia and Canada, where, countries that accepted a large number of immigrants have shortages of housing. Australia and Canada have higher per capita shortage than US. So really, it's much of the same, just expanding it globally.
Is there anything I didn't ask you that you would like to talk about for a sec? We've got 1 minute left.
Yeah, it is an incredible opportunity to invest in our business, to become our partners. So again, when you go to our website, there is and again, we use the crowdfunding. Invest as little as $1,000, you can become a partner in our business. And so many of our customers are first become partners, and then they get the news, and then they get the ideas, and the juice is flowing. So just going to our website, and the offering, there is a real incentive to invest before February 28th, because we're selling common shares at $5 a share. The price goes up after February 28th, and there is a limit to how much money we need. So that's the only other thing I can think of.
Wow. So, and I'm not trying to sell anything, and neither are you per se, but this is obviously practically limitless growing thing, and it makes me really excited to see what you're doing and see how you're doing this. Gene, thank you for telling me all this stuff and for being here with me on the show tonight.
Thank you for asking great questions. I think you've asked them all. So now I can just refer other people to your podcast and say, hey, here are the questions, and you already know the answers.
Yeah. Well, that is just spectacular.
Well,
thanks
I'm
again.
excited to see you in just a few days in Florida. So look forward to it.
Yeah, that'll be good. So you guys that listen to this, go back and listen a couple of times. This is a true innovation. Only one like it in the world. There's so much demand that he can barely keep up with it in this factory and building factories as fast as he can with no end in sight. And I am stoked. And so this is a person that is doing things with his gifts and talents and ingenuity and genius and helping himself, his kids, and everybody else create that ultimate life.
You're listening to Your Ultimate Life with Kellan Fluckiger, only on LA Talk Radio.